Let's make a Scrappy Halloween pillow using half square triangles. We're also going to put a zipper on the back so that it's easy to remove a pillow form. So first, grab some scraps of Halloween fabric that you have lying around. So you can see mine are all different sizes, and then I just squared up two sides and started cutting 3.5-inch strips across this fabric. So I'm going to be making these into 3-inch half square triangles later. So the 3.5-inch squares are perfect to cut down into 3-inch half square triangles with minimal waste. So now I'm just subcutting my 3.5-inch squares and putting the scraps that don't quite make the square cut to the side for hopefully using later. All right, so here are all of my cuts. So you're going to need 49 background colors and 49 kind of darker colors if you want to make the same design. So I'm going to lay these together, right sides together. I'm taking a cream square and a darker color so it's a nice contrast, and I'm going to sew a 1/4-inch seam twice along the middle diagonal of these squares. So if you want to mark the center, you can, but I am going to use this handy diagonal seam tape, and I'll link it in the description of this video. It makes it so much easier to do half square triangles. So I like to chain piece mine. I'm just showing 3 for now, but I sew along one side and then flip them around and sew along the other side. It just makes quick work of sewing up this half square triangle method. So once I get them all sewn up, I am going to use the Tucker Trimmer 1 to trim mine up, but first we have to cut these in half. So I'm going to cut the 3 that I prepped in half so I can show you how I trim these up with the Tucker Trimmer. And I have done a tutorial using the Tucker Trimmer before, but use whatever method you like to trim these up. Like I said, I'm trimming these half square triangles to 3 inches. So to use the Tucker Trimmer, you want to press your seams on your half square triangles first. So I'm getting all of those prepped, and don't worry, I have tested my mat here and it does not heat through as long as I'm just doing a few at a time. All right, so I'm just gonna use my Tucker Trimmer to trim these to 3 inches. I am cutting these to a whole number, so you can see I have a circle there on the top right corner that shows me that I'm using the whole number side, and I line up the diagonal and trim to 3 inches. I have a much more in-depth tutorial, like I said, but it makes quick work of trimming these, and I absolutely love this trimmer. All right, so I have them all trimmed up, and now I'm just going to start laying them out. So I'm doing an 18-inch, it's about an 18-inch pillow cover form. So to get that size, I am laying out 7 half square triangles by 7. So I'll need 49 half square triangles for the front and 49 for the back. So I have 98 half square triangles trimmed up. So for the front, I'm just keeping this scrappy, but I did want to use all of the same background on the front just so it looks a little more cohesive. You can see I have some different cream background fabric down there as well. I'm not going to use any of those for the front. So just, even though this is scrappy, it does keep it a little more cohesive. So I have them all laid out, and to sew mine, I like to sew my rows together, and I keep them all organized by stacking them. So I started with the last one in the row because I wasn't thinking, but typically I would start with the front. So just keep that in mind for how you choose to stack yours. I made these pin markers and they help me keep my rows organized. So I'm labeling each row that I have stacked up 1 through 7, and then also each row 1 at a time. But these pin markers come in really handy. I have some that have numbers and some that have letters. And I actually did show how to make these as well. They're super simple though, but I'll link that video in the description as well. So once I get them all marked, I just take them over to the sewing machine And remember, for whatever reason, I started with the last square in the row. So I'm going to make sure I sew mine together in kind of the reverse order. Thankfully, I noticed that before I sewed them together. So I'm just sewing a 1/4 inch seam, and I keep adding on the next square in the pile. Now, if I did mess it up, I don't think it would be that big of a deal because it is a scrappy pillow form, but you know, sometimes if you get your layout all laid out and really like it, you want it to stay that way. So I'm just going to sew showing 1 row, and you'll do the same thing for all 7. So there it is. And I pressed all the seams, and I'm with those pin markers, I can make sure that I have them all laid out in the correct order. You see them over there on the right. So I'm going to lay these all out, and I made sure I pressed each row, every other row in a different direction so that I could nest all these seams. So you can see my row 1 and all my odd rows are pressed to the left, and then all of my even rows are pressed to the right. So now all my seams in each row are going to be going in a different direction. So when I lay these right sides together to sew them together, the seams are pointed in opposite directions, which helps them lay really flat so you don't have a lot of bulk there. So I'm going to pin right at the seam, and after I get all these pinned, I can take them to the sewing machine and sew the rows together and help bring this whole pillow top together. So I like to pin at all of the seams, at least 1 pin in there to help make sure all my points are lined up. And it really helps a lot keeping everything nice and even. So I'm going to do the next thing with the next 2 rows, the same thing with the next 2 rows, and pin all of those, and then head to the sewing machine and sew a 1/4 inch seam. So I like to pull the pins out right before my needle gets to them so I don't run them over. Usually with my pins, if I do run them over, it's not too big of a deal, but you don't want to accidentally hit one with your needle. It could break your needle, and you don't want all those pieces falling into your machine. So I have this first set sewn together, and then you'll just keep doing the same thing. Fold the top row down to the second one and pin them along the seams, and sew a 1/4 inch seam until you have the whole top all sewn together. So right now it's just kind of busy work in getting these steps done, but taking the time to put the pins in if you really want all the points to line up is really important for making those points meet nicely. All right, so the whole front of the pillow is done now. So I'm going to lay out the pieces for the back of the pillow. And I'm just going to do the same thing, lay them all out 7 by 7. But this time, when I sew all of the rows together, I'm keeping that top row separate. So I didn't sew that together so I could put a zipper in between there. That way the zipper isn't at the top or their bottom, adding bulk, and then you can kind of see it when it's, sitting on your couch. This way it's a little bit hidden because it's on the back. So I laid the zipper right side down, and you can see I have it the length of the pillow. And I'm just going to sew across it. I put my zipper foot on so I could get as close to the teeth as possible. When I get to the zipper, I leave the needle down and move the zipper out of the way and just sew across. So zippers are really actually pretty easy to attach. Just make sure, I like to use zippers that are nylon so that I can sew right over the teeth. If you use a metal zipper, then you're going to have to be very careful with sewing. Also keep in mind that this zipper is going to add a little bit more length to the back of the pillow, so you're going to need to kind of adjust when you get to that point with sewing it all together. So keep in mind here, when I'm sewing on the top row onto the zipper, I didn't think it through and I'm sewing on the fabric side. It made it a little bit hard and I had to go slower because I couldn't see where the zipper teeth were, so I had to feel along the way. So I increased my stitch length up to 3 here, and I'm just doing a top stitch along the edge about 1/8 of an inch away from the seam, and this will hold my seam in place so that the zipper doesn't get caught, as you're pulling through, so it doesn't grab any of that seam fabric. So the zipper is in place, and I put some stitches on either side just so I don't accidentally pull the zipper pull off. Now here's the front of the pillow again, and I basted some batting scraps to the back so I could do some quick quilting. This is optional, you don't have to quilt it at all, but I just thought it would add some fun, a little bit of fun to it, make it look more like a quilted piece. So trim off the batting, square it all up, and now the front of the pillow will be done after that, and we'll just be sewing the front and the back together. So I'm sewing the front of the pillow up because it's going to be a little bit smaller than the back because of the zipper. And make sure to open your zipper so that it's easier to turn this later. I'm going to add some clips, and then when I sew, I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam, but I'm going to follow the squared up batting because you can see here the back of the pillow sticks out a little bit, and I want to make sure I'm catching all of the seams. So sew all of the way around a 1/4 inch seam, and then we'll trim off any excess. Make sure you don't cut through any of the stitches though. So we're just going to trim everything up so that we don't have bulk in those seams. And then I also like to clip the corners on the pillows too so that the corners push out nicely. When you do that, again, just make sure you don't clip through any seams because you don't want to open up any of those seams. You don't want to see the pillow form sticking out later. And now that we had that zipper left open, I have forgot to do that before, and it's a little trickier to open that way. But now that we are finished, we can flip the pillow right side out and push out all the seams. I like to use my fingers to kind of roll them so that they lay nice and flat. You could press it here too if you wanted to, but I'm excited, so I'm just going to put the pillow in and see how it looks. So like I said, this makes about an 18-inch pillow cover. So it is perfect for a decor piece for the holidays. And you could do this with any seasonal fabric. So there we go. It turned out so good. And I hope this is a good lesson to you that, you know, if you're just using scrap fabrics, that you don't have to fuss about the layout so much. I have a lot of little triangles that are the same pattern that are close together, and I think the pillow still looks great. And even the back that doesn't have quilting on it turned out really good too. All right, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial for this scrappy pillow, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.